Saman Neki
Today, I am going to deliver a lecture on religious specialist, shaman, priest and diviner. As introduction, let us see what is meant by religious specialist. The first form of specialization of labor known to men was the performance of supernaturalistic rites, and this idea seems well supported by the hundreds of primitive societies. Full-time religious specialists are seldom found among the culturally crudest societies, those which lack domesticated plants and animals and provide for themselves by simple hunting, fishing and collecting edible plants. At least a rudimentary development of religious specialization has, however, generally been found among even the very simplest societies. Various attempts have been made to classify systematically the kinds of religious specialists found in human societies, but as a system, none of these has found general acceptance, and usages of these terms are not uniform. Joachim Voss has distinguished the religious specialists as founder, reformer, prophet, seer, magician, diviner, saint and priest. Additional terms commonly applied to the primitive world are shaman, witch doctor, sorcerer and medicine man. In the present discussion, let us know about the shamans, priests and divination only. Shaman. The word shaman is derived from the Siberian Tungus word shaman, which means to know in an ecstatic manner. The term shaman in its widest sense refers to a man or woman who serves a society as a part-time religious practitioner. As a technician of the sacred, the shaman is the charismatic figure par excellence, personally incarnating the spirits and inspiring the awe and worship of the congregation. Becoming a shaman is a movement from an initiatory phase of identity disintegration through painful self-reconstruction and on to rebirth as a transformed practitioner able to control and reveal the potent spirits that fragment other weaker souls. He acquires the power through certain spirits to read minds and heal illness, to predict the future. Typically, those who become shamans do not choose their occupation willingly. Rather, they are called by spirits who lead the initiate into realms of intense and often terrifying sensations of personal suffering, powerful emotion, and the disintegration of identity. The ferocity of the initiatory phase varies individually and cross-culturally. Shamans are often nervously unstable persons and even epileptics. Hence, they work themselves into frenzy during their professional labor, and this condition is interpreted as possession by a spirit. A Tahitian becomes medium of supernatural message with convulsed muscles, distorted features, and strained eyes. An Ona shaman, when treating a patient, at once begins to sing in order to summon his familiar spirit through whom he hopes to extract the cause of the illness. Suddenly, the doctor is seized with a tremor. He sings louder and faster. The spirit has entered the body and merged with his soul. The doctor wildly shakes and distorts his torso. In a state of the utmost excitement, as though mad, he begins to suck out the disease-causing agent, stares at it with glassy eyes, and topples over completely exhausted. Among the polar Eskimo, shamans or angakok were numerous. Almost every family had one. Both men and women became shamans, and although they were often compensated for their services, none devoted full time to shamanism. Shamans possessed the ability to call forth or suppress storms and to banish or summon game animals. Their most important function was to cure disease, interpreted as the loss of the soul. Soul loss is regarded as serious, and if the soul is not recovered, the individual will eventually die. Curing rites were held by the shaman at the request of the patient. The shaman gradually entered a trance state by singing spirit songs, beating on a drum, dancing in a wild and uncontrolled manner. When trance state was achieved, the shaman trembled and groaned, sometimes foaming at the mouth and ultimately becoming rigid and insensible to pain. In this state, the shaman rescues the patient's soul. Once the soul had been recovered, the patient was expected to improve. The shaman was also capable of stealing and hiding the souls of enemies, and so powerful shaman were thus regarded with fear and respect. A Manipuri Meitei shaman is known as Maiba. A professional Maiba holds ritual ceremonies by way of praying to the concerned god as a medical part, namely ceremonies of Saban Thaba, Kayom Lakpa, Yenhing Thaba at the request of the patient or member of the family of the patient for recovering the illness. Sometimes, when the cause of illness of the patient is of Hingsa Bisangba, visiting of female evil spirit to the patient, the Maiba, who is controlled by his familiar spirit, performs Thautoba to get off the evil spirit from the soul and body of the patient by addressing to the evil spirit in a special language. The Meitei shaman is generally known as Maiba in the case of male and Maibi in the case of female. Maibi wears white cloth in traditional style. The Maiba or Maibi requires intensive training under his or her seniors, and they are commonly believed to have vision of the god and goddess whom they serve and are able to communicate their message during their trances to the people. They hold ritual of the Sagai lineage and the Salai clan of the Meitei community in front of the ancestral deity, and in the proceeding of the ritual, they utter hymn of incoherent language and trembling as if possessed by the deity. They predict the future of the clan or the individual as being forecasted by the deity. They are considered to be the mediators between the supernatural and human beings. Many times, such predictions come out to be quite true in the actual life, and so they are engaged to conduct rituals of expiation and exercise to avoid ill fate in the post-marriage life, illness, death, accident, etc., befalling on a particular individual or group of people. They also perform ritual ceremonies invoking Meitei deities of different clans. The service of Maiba or Maibi is also essential in the ritual ceremony of ancestral deity of the Meitei community, like Lai Harauba, that is merry-making festival of deity locally known as Umang Lai, etc. Further, a Maiba or Maibi is sometimes engaged for telling future of an individual, and in the proceedings he or she throws some coins on the floor. Then, after observing the state of position of the coins, he or she predicts the future of the individual concerned. The term priest is generally used to describe an individual whose powers are derived primarily from traditional lore passed down as the tradition of a particular organized religious group, sometimes referred to as a cult. Priest usually implies large societies with centralized authority, a fairly elaborate development of culture. The existence of an organized cult with well-formulated doctrine and fixed rituals. It also implies the specialist, the priests, who guide or lead in group ritual directed principally towards personified supernatural beings. For example, the religious specialists of the Inca, Maya, and Aztec, whose ritual acts concerned the great national gods and the society as a whole, have customarily been called priests, and they are distinguished from the lesser curers, diviners, and the like of their societies. Similar specialists who lead in rites of ancestor worship among African Negro societies are customarily given the name priest, and they are distinguished from shamans, sorcerers, witches, or diviner. Among the Zuni, traditionally a horticultural Pueblo-dwelling people of New Mexico, individuals become priests by means of prolonged and specialized training involving the rise through a succession of offices to the position of head priest of a religious society. In Zuni curing societies, the priests conducted elaborate ritual performances that involved the careful memorization of long sequences of ritual activity. Among the Zuni, the priests were part-time specialists. Members of the organized religious fraternities of the Pueblo peoples of the southwestern United States are also commonly labeled as priests. Here, the individual priest does not stand out as leader. Instead, all adult males belong to one or more of the religious societies, the members of each of which are jointly charged with specialized religious tasks to honor the ancestral gods, make rain, cure the sick, or promote the fertility of crops. These religious duties are highly formalized and elaborate. With the principal exception of curing rites, they are performed in accordance with a fixed ceremonial calendar and are directed towards the benefit of the whole social group. The distinction between priests and other categories of primitive religious specialization roughly corresponds with the distinction between religion and magic. Although the concepts of religion and magic are logically distinguishable as evident in actual supernaturalistic behavior, they tend to be mixed. So also with the priest and the shaman, medicine man and diviner. The role of the primitive priest is of course analogous with that of the priest of our own society. That is, it emphasizes knowledge of an elaborate theology and leadership in propitiatory rites for communal benefit. However, the primitive priest is also often a magician, and many acts which are not magic may be included among ritual behavior of the shaman, medicine man, and diviner. The existence of priests in a society usually presupposes a relatively high degree of religious organization. The priests are associated with the professional supernatural beings. We are familiar with religious practitioners of this sort in our own society. The description given above applies in general to priests of the Roman Catholic, the Protestant, and the Brahmin of the Hindus. Presence of such specialized priesthood is found in technologically advanced societies. Priests, particularly those belonging to the Roman Catholic denomination, have taken the vows of obedience, chastity, and poverty at the time of their priestly ordination. Besides the above-mentioned role, in certain societies, the priest becomes the overall head of the community. Manipuri Meitei Brahmin is a priest known as Purohit or Purit. The Brahmin is exclusively sanctioned to attain Hindu deities in temples. He normally performs the services of prayer for the prosperity of individual or members of the family or communities, and also to keep at bay the evil spirits from entering into the soul and the body of the individuals, etc. It is worth mentioning that even though they learn the ritual proceedings and the hymns, the status of Brahmin are ascribed by virtue of birth. Divination is the process of using ritual means to reveal things hidden to ordinary perception, such as information about future events, sources of illness, the identity of witches, indeed anything that cannot be ascertained through profane methods of investigation. In various societies, a diviner adopts a wide variety of techniques, including the use of oracles and augury. The purposes of divination vary according to the concerns of specific cultures. In many African cultures, for example, witchcraft is an important factor in social relations. A diviner acts primarily to identify and forestall the activities of witches. An Ajande who has suffered illness or misfortune may choose from a variety of oracles to divine his bewitcher. Alternatively, he might hold a ceremony in which a diviner publicly divines the culprit. In hunting societies, divination may focus on where to find game or how to end a dry spell in hunting. In the American Southwest, where access to water is both vital and difficult for farmers, the divination of water sources through dosing has become particularly elaborate. The Meiteis often ask to a diviner, the Maiba or Maibi, for knowing their future, for instance, person to whom he or she would marry and their relation after marriage, or prospect in their own life and their children, and whether the lost property will be found or not, or even whether they will get a job or not, etc. When divination seeks source of misfortune, it generally provides a cure as well. This cure frequently involves redressing a ritual dereliction that has caused the problem. The Sisala of Ghana, for example, most frequently consult a diviner when they are ill. The diviner always discovers that they have neglected one or another ritual duty, and that the offended ancestors are inflicting the illness as a punishment. By making a particular sacrifice, the patient can appease the gods and prevent further affliction. If witchcraft is responsible, the witch can be confronted and forced to halt his or her activities. Many divination ceremonies center around augury, the interpretation of random occurrences. A ceremony creates a phenomenon over which human control seems impossible. The fall of a set of lots, for example, or the pattern of dealt cards, or the condition of the entrails of animals. Since human control is impossible, any pattern may be attributed to supernatural agencies. In Denmark, a Pentecostalist seeking guidance may reach into a jar full of slips of paper, each with a biblical verse printed on it. Since the seeker cannot distinguish the slips, the choice of a particular one is regarded as the work of God, and the verse on the slip as a divine message. By creating a random event, interpretive divination opens a space for the manifestation of supernatural signs. Such signs are visible to all observers, In many cases, however, they can be properly interpreted only by ritual specialists or diviners. The diviners have special training in the craft of divination, often acquired through a lengthy apprenticeship. More importantly, however, diviners usually have a special gift, a supernatural ability that enables them to see what others cannot. In many cases, they have a special ability to become possessed by spirits who direct their actions. A Dembu diviner, for example, is possessed during a divination ceremony by a Seth. It is the Seth speaking through the person who actually identifies the causes of illness. In other cases, such as dosing or shamanism, the diviner is himself invested with a special power. Religion has to do with those areas of life where supernatural forces are believed to operate and where the appropriate attitudes are those of faith and reverence. Almost all people possess full-time or part-time religious practitioners who are responsible for the technology considered necessary in dealing with supernatural forces. Even where specialization of labor is virtually absent, most people possess shamans or spirit mediums who are capable of communicating with the spirit world and sometimes of taking action within it. In more specialized societies, spirit mediums and curers are likely to be more specialized, and their efforts are often supplemented by priests and other authorities who derive their powers not from direct contact with the supernatural, but from participation in a religious cult within which specialized religious knowledge is handed down.